All right. Hey, y'all. My name is Kat. I'm a wildlife technician. I've been working with bats all summer, recording their calls, and it just helps us determine how many bats we have and where we are. Um, I've been learning a lot about bats in the process, and I wanted to share that with y'all tonight. So welcome to my bat talk. A lot of people are afraid of bats, but I don't think they should be. They're really quite awesome critters. I'm going to discuss their biology, human interactions and influences, ecological benefits, and recent bat research. And I'm also going to debunk some bat myths. All right, I'm going to start off with their natural history. And this little guy right here is actually a tricolored bat, one of the Georgia threatened bats. And this is actually a picture I took in a culvert. So our first myth is bats are flying mice. They are actually not flying mice, and they're not even remotely related. So that's untrue. They are mammals, however, just like we are. So mammals have hair, they give birth to live young, and they produce milk for nursing. They did evolve earlier than most other mammalian orders and have changed relatively little in comparison with other orders. Bats have existed for the last 60 million years. That's since the age of the dinosaurs. That's pretty incredible. And 20% of all mammals right now are bats, which makes them the second largest order behind rodents. They're the only mammal capable of true flight. All other flying mammals, flying, is actually considered gliding or soaring. Because they can fly, they are found worldwide in a variety of habitats, except for Antarctica. They can live in caves, hollow trees, buildings, bridges, and mines. Many prefer forested areas, but others live in urban areas. And some bats prefer being alone. Other bats live in colonies of dozens, thousands, and even millions. We generalize bats into cave or tree roosting groups, but some bats change their roosting sites depending on the season. There are over 1,400 species of bats worldwide, and in North America, we have 45. Here in Georgia, we have 16 bats. They're all protected by state law. We tend to forget about bats because they're nocturnal and fly above our eyes, but they're actually one of the top orders and considered quite successful when you look at their evolutionary success. And this fun looking bat right here is a hammer-headed bat. And yes, their mammary glands are beneath their armpits. So another myth is that a lot of people think that bats will fly purposely into your hair to get stuck. That's actually not true. If they're in a room or a cave, they're swooping down at you because as they have to drop down from their roosting site in order to gain enough momentum to fly. And this guy right here is a vampire bat. So the bat order is the second largest order out of the 19 mammalian orders. And when you break down their order name, Chiroptera, into its Greek roots, it means hand wing. If you can imagine your fingers growing to be the length of your body and then webbing or skin growing between those fingers, that would be similar to a bat wing. Since their wings are hand-like, they're capable of more precise movements, which makes them better flyers than birds. Bat flight, they even sometimes scoop insects into their mouths so that they can eat them. I think that's pretty cool. I just think about bats scooping with their butt insects into their mouth. It just kind of makes me laugh. So another myth is that all bats drink blood. However, it's actually only 3 species of bats that drink blood, and they're appropriately named vampire bats, and they're all found in the South American tropics. Unlike how media and culture commonly portrays them, they're actually quite small, about 4 inches, and they weigh 2 ounces. Then they are also in the suborder microbat. They feed on the blood of vertebrates, usually domestic livestock, but they will sometimes feed on people. And they don't actually suck blood. They bite the skin with their razor-sharp teeth and then lap it up. Their bat saliva has special properties that allows for more efficient feeding. And it's unknown when people compared them to the European legends of vampires, as Europeans didn't discover them until the time of the conquistadores. So the order Chiroptera is further broken down into two suborders, microbat and megabat. Microbats are small bats, mostly insectivorous. However, some larger species do feed on lizards, frogs, fish, and even small bats. They live in trees, caves. They'll live in trees, caves, and buildings in wooded areas, usually near water. We only have microbats here in Georgia, and they average 2 inches long with a 10-inch wingspan. And megabats, the other suborder of Chiroptera, are the largest bats, but fortunately, they are not carnivorous. They're all frugivorous, or they eat nectar. And they eat nectar from flowers. They're much larger than microbats, with larger eyes in comparison to their head, which allows them to see their food easily. Our biggest bat in Georgia is the hoary bat. It's actually the bat that's pictured here on the left, and he's got a 16-inch wingspan. The flying fox, and this guy is a golden crown flying fox, he's got a wingspan of up to 6 feet. That's pretty crazy. Through capturing bats, tagging them, letting them go, and then recapturing them, wildlife biologists have discovered that bats can live long lives, about 20 to 30 years. One of our Georgia bats used to hold the record for the longest lived bat in the wild at 34 years, the little brown myotis. This little guy right here is actually the little brown myotis. However, that record has been broken by Brandt's myotis at living 41 years in the wild. That's an astonishing long life for such a little guy. Compare that to mice, which live 1 to 2 years. This life cycle diagram represents Northern Hemisphere bats, not tropical bats. They have a different life cycle. But North American bats, both tree and cave dwelling, will eat and start to swarm in the fall, and they also find their mate in the fall. They'll eat a lot in the fall to gain weight and energy for their fat reserves, so that they can have those reserves for hibernation, which is a period of deep sleep in winter, and then they emerge in the spring. In the fall, after mating, females will actually delay fertilization until the spring so as to save their energy reserves for hibernation. In the spring, once they emerge, they let their eggs fertilize, and gestation lasts about 3 months, and pups are born from May to June. When females are ready to give birth, they hang what we consider right side up, looking like they're doing pull-ups, and they'll give birth into their tail membrane. Babies don't have fur when they're born, but they are fully developed. Georgia bats average 1 to 2 young, and they are born, but they're fully developed, and they are about 1/3 of their mom's size. They cling to their mom during the day as she roosts, but when she leaves at night to hunt, she leaves them behind in the nest. Bat pups are ready to fly within a few weeks of being born, but they stay with their mother during the first season in maternity colonies. In fall, bats start the cycle back over, forming swarms to find a mate, and they'll also usually migrate from their summer roosts or maternity colonies to find a winter location. Since bats are nocturnal and nest in high locations, they have few predators, but bat pups do suffer from flying accidents, and they sometimes fall from their nests. But once they've matured, their mortality rate is low. Another common myth, and I know I've said this in the past, is you're blind as a bat. So bats actually are not blind. Microbats do have small and poorly developed eyes, but that just gives them poor vision. They can see as well as we do. Most bats don't see as well as people in color, except at dusk or dawn. On the other hand, megabats have larger eyes and depend on vision to find their food and orient themselves. Some megabats are capable of telling the different fields of vision apart, which probably helps them find food. Since bats are active at night, they require a special set of skills to find their food. They emit high-frequency sound pulses through either their mouth or nose and listen for the echo of these sound pulses as they bounce off objects. We call this echolocation, and it is highly sophisticated and beneficial to bats. Bat ears tend to be large and shaped funny so that they can detect these signals better. Echolocation has a range of about 30 to 60 feet, which means they'll need their vision to help them detect objects beyond that range. With the echoes from echolocation, they can discover the size, shape, and texture of objects. All microbats and some megabats echolocate, however, their use and approach varies among the species. Microbats use it with their vision as they hunt, and they have smaller eyes. As they have smaller eyes, they rely heavily on echolocation to find food and navigate. Most species echolocate at higher frequencies than we can hear, but that means that we just can't hear them hunting. We wouldn't want to hear them hunt, as these signals can be quite intense. The range between the sound of their lowest and highest signals is similar to the range of noise produced by a coffee grinder and the noise level produced at a rock concert. However, bats do make audible noises. If you're near a colony, you can often hear them squawk and squeal as they fuss with each other. Even though you may not notice them, bats are in most areas and we interact with them quite often. Our dealings with bats are both positive and negative. I'll start with some of those sweeter ways. Bats are great pest exterminators. As I'm sure you're familiar with, Georgia has a lot of insect pests, including those blood-sucking mosquitoes. Luckily for us Georgians, all of our native bats are insectivorous, and they eat a lot of insects, at least 50 to 100% of their body weight. They prey on various types of insects, including many agricultural pests that attack our plants. Biologists have analyzed bat poop from an Indiana colony with 450 individuals and found that they could eat almost 8 billion insects a year. Bat poop, also known as guano, has been mined for human use. Historically, in the late 1800s, it was exploited as it contains saltpeter, a key ingredient of gunpowder in those days. These days, we mine guano because it is a great natural fertilizer. It's composed of nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium, all essential minerals that help plants grow and be healthy. Many gardeners use guano in their gardens. Bat guano also supports healthy cave ecosystems as it provides important nutrients to its various unique organisms, including a bacteria that companies have developed to improve their detergents. Ecotourism is a developing and popular industry with origins in the 1970s environmental awareness movements. Wildlife watching has become more and more popular, including watching bats emerge from their roosts. Best places to watch bats emerge from their caves are cave entrances. The best places to view bats emerging are cave entrances and bridges. One such bridge is the Congress Avenue Bridge in Austin, Texas, which is home to 1.5 million bats. It's become a very popular tourist attraction, bringing in an estimated $3 million to Austin. Pictured on the right here is Bracken Cave, and it's another popular bat watching spot near San Antonio, Texas. It's home to an estimated 20 million bats. That's a lot of bats. And income from these areas helps support the local economy and natural resource conservation. Oh. I went back too soon. Okay. I did it again. There we go. Right now, it's probably difficult to access these bat watching opportunities. However, you can build a bat house at your own home. It's a great way to see bats without having to commit to travel, and it also helps avoid the nuisance of them being in your home. I've had a lot of fun this summer, honestly, watching bats dance around at night, so I do highly recommend it. Bats are also very important to a number of plants, including many that we love. But plants that depend on bats are called chiropterophilic, which is another word I'm going to break down for you guys. See, if you break down chiroptero, that refers to bats, of course, and philic means love of. So we've got bat-loving plants. And more than 500 species of flowering plants that we use for food and medicine depend on bats for pollination and seed dispersal. And that includes mangoes, almonds, figs, bananas, peaches, guava, cashews, and agave plants, and of course, many more. Unfortunately, just like any other relationship, we do not always get along with bats. Many people are scared of bats, most likely because they are misunderstood due to their nocturnal existence. It's easy to fear what we don't know. They have been persecuted and hunted for a very long time. Bats are portrayed as evil, blood-sucking creatures in the media, playing on traditional fears. Until recently in the United States, blocking the entrances of caves was a common practice to eliminate a so-called bat problem. In other areas of the world, especially in developing countries, bats are hunted for bushmeat and to be used in traditional medicine. Many people and places use pesticides. Use of pesticides has increased, along with a decrease in water quality. Both of these negatively affect bats, both directly and indirectly. Bats are exposed to pesticides through food and water contamination, but also skin-to-skin contact in their roost sites. Pesticides bioaccumulate or concentrate in tissues of insectivorous bats. Pesticides and the decrease in water quality has a negative impact on their aquatic-based food sources. Insect larvae usually begin their life in water, and with the presence of pesticides, they may die or accumulate these toxins in their tissues. The accumulation of pesticides in bat tissue can cause a suppression of their immune system, a reduction in their energy reserves, harms the performance of echolocation, disrupts hormone production, and it makes torpor and hibernation difficult, as well as other possibilities. With the growing importance of finding alternative energy sources, we have developed wind and solar energy farms. Sadly, these farms have had a negative impact on bats. Each year, it's estimated that tens to hundreds of thousands of bats die each year at wind farms, especially during fall migration. Bats suffer collisions with the spinning wind blades, but they also die from barotrauma, which is caused by the rapid decrease in air pressure around the spinning wind turbines, which causes lung bleeding and death. Solar energy farms aren't as devastating to bats, but they do take up suitable habitat and can be quite extensive. Sorry. One of the most negative ways that we interact with bats is the development of their natural habitat. Bats live in a variety of habitats, usually near water, but we also like to be near water, so this is a source of conflict. The development of their suitable wildlife habitat for human use, such as farms, cattle operations, and buildings, is increasing around the world, especially in tropical rainforests, which host the highest number of bats and number of species of bats. Although some forested patches may remain, these patches don't decrease the amount of food and water that's available for bats, especially the migratory species. Given the opportunity, bats will enter any building. In fact, they can squeeze through holes the size of a dime. In a home or other building occupied by people, they may become a nuisance. Bats are not aggressive. They can be smelly, noisy, and stain the floor beneath them with guano and urine. If you see just one bat in your house, I urge you to please be calm and just turn off the light, open a window or door, and wait for them to leave. Bats can also carry a number of diseases, some of which are transmissible to people. So here's a very popular myth that all bats have rabies. All bats do not have rabies. In fact, an estimated 1% of bats have rabies. And even though bats are the #1 source for contracting rabies in the United States, only 1 to 2 people contract it in a year. You're twice as likely to have a vending machine fall on you. Bats are host to a number of viruses, but interestingly enough, they do not get sick from them. Unfortunately, some of these viruses are zoonotic, which means they're transmissible from wildlife to people. We are seeing a rise in zoonotic transmission of diseases due to the increase in close contact with wildlife. As we develop and fragment natural forests and other ecosystems, wildlife and human populations come into closer and closer contact, which allows for the spread of zoonotic pathogens. One study found that the chance of spillover increases when 40% of the available forest cover is gone. Wildlife trade, unsustainable food systems, and deforestation are all contributing factors to the increase in contact. And then, like I said, they do carry zoonotic diseases. Two that I wanted to touch on are rabies and histoplasmosis. Rabies is a fatal disease caused by a virus, which needs entry into the bloodstream in order for infection to occur. It affects the central nervous system, your spine and your brain. And its later stages of infection causes lethargy or aggressive behavior. It's 100% preventable with a vaccine, but if you're bitten by a bat, please wash the area immediately with plenty of warm water and soap, as well as call the doctor. Histoplasmosis is a respiratory disease caused by the inhalation of fungal spores from bird and bat droppings. A lot more people contract it than we think, since the symptoms range from none to flu-like. All right. We want to avoid places where there are lots of animal droppings, but if it's necessary to clean them up, please wear a respirator. However, most histoplasmosis infections do come from bird droppings. Contracting a disease from a bat is uncommon, but it is possible and requires direct contact. So please avoid handling bats. So not much is known about bats beyond basic life history and biology. Biologists are currently working to understand them better, and other scientists have used them as a source of inspiration in a few different fields. Many bats live in urban areas since they will roost in buildings and under bridges. One great example I already mentioned is pictured here, the Congress Bridge in Austin, Texas. There are a few key ingredients for bat survival in urban areas. As long as there's tree cover and water, you'll often find bats. The more trees there are, leads to an increase in bat activity and the number of species of bats. Bats do well in urban environments as long as they are adaptable in their roosting and feeding strategies. Typically, open space foragers do better than closed space foragers, which prefer wooded areas. Orange lit street lamps are preferable to white lit street lamps by bats as they actually attract more insects. The white light of white lit street lamps leads to an increase of out predation of bats. Hold on, I need some water. Okay. So more and more scientists and engineers are looking at nature for biologically inspired designs since they've been evolutionarily tested. After a thorough study of the various types of flight of bats, insects, and birds, scientists have found that the mammalian flight structures allows for more efficient flight with the use of artificial muscles. Advantages of bat-inspired flight include reduced noise, as well as greater maneuverability, adaptability, and efficiency. Engineers are developing drones with thin and flexible wings for flapping flight. Airplane craft are being considered to be revamped in the future, so don't be surprised if we have batty-looking airplanes. Base jumping suits have also been inspired by bat wing structure. So this is actually a BatBot, one of the drones that are currently being produced by engineers. I think it's pretty cool to look at. Biomimicry technology is also extending into the sonar field. Bats are partially responsible for the development of sonar and even ultrasound technologies. Furthermore, it's theorized that once bat echolocation is better understood, it'll lead to better autonomous robots, as in more driverless cars, canes for the blind, and wheelchairs. The Ultra Cane is a cane developed for the blind, which uses sonar to help them get around. Bats are so good at echolocation, they've inspired engineers to design better sonar systems in their morphology, echo information acquisition, and object classification. Some systems have improved their sonar to the use of 2 sensors, just like a bat ears, to better detect objects and classify them. Studying bat echolocation has helped sonar technology with object classification, collision avoidance, trajectory alignment, and object rejection. Even the airport screening machines at airports have been inspired by bat echolocation. So scientists have found evidence that since bats host more viruses than other species, except for rodents, that since they don't get sick, that they may possess the ability to control viral replication through their innate immunity. If we learn how bats control viruses, this would help us with understanding the factors of viral replication and evolution and produce more effective vaccines. It's theorized that the increased metabolism and higher body temperatures during flight somehow boosts and enhances their immune system, which helps them against viruses' virulence. Vampire bat saliva has some special properties to it. As I said earlier, it allows them to feed more efficiently. The presence of the anticoagulant is well studied, but their saliva also contains a peptide, which are molecules of small chains of amino acids, which acts as a vasodilator. It helps open up the blood vessels. These properties allow to ensure more efficient blood flow. Scientists believe that developing this peptide would help doctors treat a range of disorders, including those with increased blood pressure in small vessels, but it could also help improve blood flow in damaged or transplanted tissues. On the other hand, we do currently use a medication derived straight from bat venom. Draculin is a medication made from bat saliva for stroke patients. It's been shown to still be effective over other alternative medicines after a longer period of time since the stroke onset. And I did want to touch on the current epidemic. COVID-19, the origin of it is still unknown. As bats carry coronaviruses, they are a possible source. However, although bats may be a possible origin, the virus most likely used another animal in between to help transmit the genome to be transmissible to people. Scientists have been urging for a while now that we need to limit our exposure to wildlife, as the increase in contact leads to more transmission of zoonotic diseases. However it occurred, this virus is transmitted person to person, so you cannot get COVID-19 from a bat. Fortunately, our North American bats do not carry this type of coronavirus, nor are bats the only carriers of coronaviruses. Since bats are uniquely able to tolerate multiple viruses, scientists believe they may hold the key to treatment. So a common myth is that bats are not important. And I hope you realize by now just how important bats are for us and even our human economies. And this really cute guy right here is a pied bat, which is a rare African bat. Bats have several very important roles in our ecosystems. And as I said, they're important for us too. As pollinators, they help support a healthy plant community in the environment. Some bats and plants have co-evolved so that they're interdependent on each other. In the Western United States, we have several bats and cacti that are interdependent, including the Mexican long-tongued bat and the lesser long-nosed bat, which pollinate agave and giant cactus plants. There are not any pollinating bats in Georgia, but there are crucial pollinators in other areas of the world, especially the tropics of South America and Asia. Many of the commercial plants we love depend on bats, including wild bananas, mangoes, figs, and cashews. As prolific insect eaters, they provide a valuable service to plant community health through their consumption of pesky bugs, which helps our agricultural industry. Bats will eat bugs that attack pecans, walnuts, almonds, rice, cotton, corn, coffee, tomatoes, and beans. A single little brown bat can eat up to 1,000 mosquito-sized insects in a single hour. A Mexican free-tailed bat can eat up to 20 female corn earworm moths, which equals 10,000 babies not being born, not eating our corn. It's estimated that bats save farmers $23 billion a year in the United States, since not as much pesticide is needed. That's a really big number. Their third important role is as seed spreaders. Bats are important seed dispersers, especially for rainforests. Fruit-eating bats carry seeds of pioneer plants to new areas, which helps a healthy forest grow. That just makes them the cutest little rainforest gardeners. Sadly, despite the existence of many large colonies, bat populations are in a decline all over the world for various reasons. And I have a list of the threats. It's not an exhaustive list of the threats that face bats, but they do represent the more crucial ones. As I mentioned earlier, wind energy facilities have caused the death of tens to hundreds of thousands of bats each year. Mostly tree bats that are high-flying and migratory. Bat conservationists around the world have grown increasingly concerned with developing strategy to mitigate these mortalities in conjunction with producing wind energy. As many of us are aware, climate change is a major threat to the health of various ecosystems all over the world. Climate change has caused an increase in heat waves, droughts, intense storms, and flooding. These rapid and unpredictable changes in weather make survival difficult for bats, as it affects hibernation periods and suitable locations, causing early emergence from hibernation in great numbers. And some migratory species have already expanded their range. That includes the eastern red bat, which is another native Georgia bat. The stress of surviving these conditions increases the death rate of females and their dependent pups, which in turn decreases the species' ability to persist over time. Here in North America, a fungal disease is now threatening our cave-dwelling populations of bats. It's called white nose syndrome due to the presence of a white mold around their nose and on their skin membranes. It first came here in 2006 from New York from Europe. We're unsure how it got here, but it's now spread from New York down into Georgia to the Midwest and also to Oregon and California on the West Coast. It's a cold-loving fungus which has proven devastating for our hibernating cave bats, as most of them live in colonies. Bats are very hygienic and will wake up to clean the mold off their body, which depletes their energy reserves. Once these reserves are gone, they emerge to look for more food, and they often end up dying from the cold or from starvation. Nearly half the hibernating bat species have white nose syndrome, and it threatens several species with global and regional extinction. In North Georgia caves, bat numbers have declined by 93%. Luckily, not all species are impacted the same, and scientists are currently working to understand the susceptibility of bats to white nose syndrome, as well as potential treatments. The biggest threat to bats is the loss of natural habitats. Habitat loss includes the destruction, fragmentation, and degradation of suitable living areas for wildlife. Bats use forested areas for roosting and foraging, but these same forests are being cleared or logged by people, especially rainforests. Adaptable bats will use houses and other structures for roosting and hibernation, but some species have more specific requirements, which means they may be pushed closer and closer to extinction. Can we personally help bats? Yeah, you can. And it's a great idea to support bats by providing them a home. Being bat-friendly supports their environmental roles, especially since they're such an important part of a healthy ecosystem. Plus, you get to watch them dance, like I mentioned earlier. And a few ways you can do that is you can add native plants to your garden that may attract bats. You can build bat houses, minimize or eliminate the use of pesticides, provide drinking water, and also keep cats indoors. All of these help you become bat-friendly right in your backyard. And this is a picture, this picture is actually a sticker you can buy at www.georgiabats.org. And all the proceeds go to the Georgia Bat Working Group for Conservation and Education. If you want to learn more, you can visit the DNR website, and they do have resources on how to build bat houses, how to eliminate bats from being in your house, and much more. The Bat Conservation International website is a great resource for people who want to learn more about bats. They're a globally recognized group that is working to end, they're a global group that is working to end the extinction of bats. And the last website I wanted to mention is the Georgia Bat Working Group website. As I said, you can buy the stickers from that website, but they also have a blog and you can volunteer with them. So if there's one thing I want y'all to remember, it's that bats are our friends and allies. They help us not only in their key roles of seed dispersal, pollination, and pest control, but they help restore our natural ecosystem balance. Bats also support human economies worldwide. They're amazing and deserve more recognition. And I wanted to show y'all some bats today. Let's see. Let me do this so I can see and make sure this is right. Okay. I brought in some bats for y'all to see today. So I've got 3 different boxes of bats. This is my hand. This guy right down here, that is a Brazilian free-tailed bat, and he's about 3 to 4 inches long. And so this is a box of all of our cave-dwelling bats here in Georgia. Half of them are threatened or endangered in this box. The myotis, these smaller myotis species right here. And this box of bats, that's a fun thing to say. This box of bats are all of our building, are all of the bats that will get into buildings. Although I will say that most of these are pretty uncommon. You'll typically see the big brown bat, which is this guy right here. They're usually going to be your building invaders. And this is one of my favorite bats right here. Let me get closer. And he is the Raffinus big-eared bat. I know I can take this down. Yeah, the Raffinus big-eared bat. Can y'all see his ears? Yeah, he's a pretty cool bat because of their big old ears, of course. And last but not least, this is a box of all the bats that will live in trees. So here, I don't know if y'all remember, but if you signed up for the this through the UGA Cobb Facebook group, there was a hoary bat. That's that guy right here. This is a hoary bat. And like I said, they're our biggest bat species with a 16-inch wingspan. But as you can see, they're all quite small. But yeah, these are all our tree-dwelling bats. All right, guys, that's everything I had for you tonight. I really appreciate you joining me on this talk. I did want to say a special thank you to my supervisor, Emily, for helping me with this, as well as Nicole Castleberry, who let me borrow her bat boxes for this presentation.